Hello SGD, and let's review a topic that goes back, at least on this channel, nearly 3 years now, the mysterious enigma, the unexplainable mystery of Core 7. Well, the real question is, how are they still selling this nonsense as a mystery? This has been sorted out, but they're still selling this. Well, let's just go through it. Okay, what is Core 7? It's a bait to get you into the lost high technology stuff. UC 16036, here's a couple of pictures of Core 7. It's a red granite core found in Egypt. First noted, discovered, documented by William Matthew Flinders Petrie, who was confused about the striation patterns and the tapering. So, for instance, like how they're thin at the top and wider at the bottom. But the mysterious core, okay, so why is it called Core 7? Because it's item 7 on this particular, I think it's from Petrie's Pyramids and Temples of Giza. Alright, so the Uncharted X channel, this issue goes back a few years. He asked, the skeptics must provide the information and they must answer these questions. They have been answered. He knows full well about this. This issue goes back a while. I've documented this. He actively suppresses, covers up this information. And so 2 or 3 months ago, before I post this video, he was on the Concrete podcast. Let's just put it out there, lying his ass off about this, because he knows, he covered it up, we've got the evidence of it, but it's necessary to continue these myths because it's very profitable. It's essentially, I see it as a cult because it has all those elements, but let's stick with it. All right, so it was Christopher Dunn who really made it, popularised it, especially in the sort of Graham Hancock sphere of all history is a lie type of thing. And there's some of the measurements, and so essentially they're arguing that it's a helical spot, it's a spiral, and that the tool must have, with each groove, and it's spiraled its way down continuously. And look, this is from Christopher Dunn's own site. These are what they're still saying now. So the most startling feature of a granite core Petrie describes is a spiral groove around the core indicating a feed rate of 0.1 inch per revolution of a drill. In my article, I stated that this feed rate was 500 times faster than modern diamond drills, which penetrate at only 0.0002 inch per revolution. This has been incorrectly interpreted by some who have concluded that a hole of the same dimension could be drilled 500 times faster by the ancient Egyptian drills. The correct way to describe it as the feed rate would be to say it was 500 times greater than the modern drills, but the rotation would not have been as fast as... Okay, there is not a material that can do this because it's the nature of the granite. Even if we invented some adamantium and put the pressure there, well, granite would chip and flake from there, but let's put that to the side for the moment. One way or the other, they're arguing that it's a helix with constant dimensions. This is what they say over and over again. So, sometimes you misspeak, get misinterpreted, but this has been a repeated theme going back years before, since the evidence was provided. They're still saying it now. Is it a spiral? So let's look at their own evidence that they present. This is pictures Christopher Dunn from his own site. And so Petrie states he could wrap it 4 times around with scarcely an interruption. So let's zoom in. And Petrie believed, because he didn't know, that it had to be a fixed jewel point to create this, that the grooves had to be created by, like the point scratching, carving out this each time it went around. Well, okay, so grooves form a regular spiral with no more interruption or wave intercity is necessarily produced by the variations in the component crystals. This spiral is truly symmetrical with its axis of the core. In one part, a groove can be traced with scarcely an interruption for a length of 4 turns. In one part, the best part, scarcely an interruption for 4 turns. Well, they were able to come up and to do with more than 4 turns. But anyway, let's look a little bit further. So constant feed rate. Even the feed rate aside, is it a spiral? Because if it's not a spiral, then this constant feed rate is irrelevant. We zoom in, and no, it isn't. This is not constant, not at all. It just can't be said to be so. Precision, advanced lost high technology, machinery. Well, no, it isn't. It's roughly spaced and with interruptions. We'll look a little bit further. Here's another photo. Zoom in again. Well, same one. I mean, okay, you can say maybe I manipulated this black and white checker just to, but yes, it isn't. It just isn't. This is their own evidence. They're arguing this. He sells himself as like an engineer in aerospace who understands precision. I understand machinery and manufacturing and stuff. Well, no, he doesn't. Or he's lying his ass off. This is his evidence that he presents, but they can get away with this because they've got this authoritative tone. They sort of say it, but they never analyse their evidence, and they don't have the balls to analyse the evidence of other people either. So again, it's just not a spiral. Well, at this point, it still could be a spiral, but the constant feed rate with those tiny variations, no, absolutely not. That's just done, gone, finished. So again, he's this. Well, it's just not. Yeah, all right. Linked from his site. Going to Eric Wilson's research. So he was another one, and well, he could wrap. He found a way to wrap the cotton thread around even more. But if he says you can fit it in the groove, then anyone should be able to come along and do it because you find the groove. But it depends who comes and how they interpret these grooves, that they're able to find new and improved ways of doing it. This is not a spiral. It's not a thread. If this is the case, well, anyway. Zoom in, just darken a little bit. So to get the thread wrapped around, they had to miss grooves. Yeah, so links and that in the description, or you can check everything I'm saying. So not only are they missing grooves, but the thread has to pass over itself to get there. This is not a spiral. This is not a helical groove. And so it is not, firstly, a constant feed rate as well. All right, so this is their evidence. We can compare it. It's just absurd that this still continues and that they're still defending this. This is not a spiral, absolutely not. There is no, if you want to argue that it is, you don't know what a spiral is. And well, they do, because it's a scam. Now, even on the same groove, the lengths and the directions vary. I think I'm manipulating it. There, we go back. This is their evidence. It's not constant, it's inconstant, it's fitful. Okay, this is from a documentary they did. So it's also the History Channel indulges in this as well. Very simple to check. They had a significant budget. They were travelling around and doing all this stuff, and they do, because it sells in it's now the History Channel. Another photo. Well, let's just trace those out. Okay, now again, you can find these images. You can do this. Now, okay. Constant feed rate, and no, you have to be delusional or an outright liar to say these things. Looking at the actual evidence, it is just not what they claim. No, all right. Now, nail in the coffin again. This actually goes back nearly 2 years now. Scientists Against Myth. Link in the description to their video. This is what existed before. Yeah, and then Scientists Against Myth, what did they do? They went to the Petri core, they took high resolution Photos, they traced and mapped it out, and again, the same pattern, so you go, oh, well, that's a cut, they're manipulated, that's a cut, so it's the same one that we have here. Exactly the same type of pattern. This is the fact of core 7. Not an opinion, a fact. They did a paper 7th of Petrie, that's linked in the description to their video, and they go through other details as well. The other mysteries of there. Look, Petrie knew his stuff to a certain extent, but he didn't, he wasn't a tool guy, and everyone's fallible. But okay, so firstly, the arguments that they make that this is a spiral with a constant feed rate are absolutely incorrect and there is no defense of this. If someone still presents this, they haven't looked at the evidence, they haven't examined it with an unbiased eye, and if they still tell you that after they've seen the evidence, then they're trying to tell you that a can opener is a fighter jet. They're delusional or they're lying. All right. So scientists against Smith, they did some experiments actually drilling granite cores with the tools that the Egyptians depict themselves using, going way back to even the hieroglyph for the stonemason's drill. That's one of their videos of making Egyptian drill holes, lost ancient high technology. They also made large, because, that's small, but how do you do how do you make a copper tube, or you wrap a piece of copper? Anyway, okay, large, small, not a problem. I'll put the description in the playlist because I replicated their experiments and I used different types of granite, different types of abrasives, the grit size. I can not only replicate those spirals as well, but I can show you how to do them. You can also create different ones because small variations in the technique of how much water is in there, how the grit size, the type of grit as well. They still all create these grooves, but you can tailor make them to, because not all the grooves are the same. Yeah, all right. But what they say, like Uncharted X, is still arguing this, that these striations, they cannot be replicated. All right, no, it's like, not simply grinding at it with abrasive powders. Yes, you can. That's so whether it's a fixed abrasive in a modern diamond embedded tool or whether it's loose abrasive, it's essentially the same process. But the loose abrasive one creates the ones that we see in these ancient artefacts. Multiple experiments now. Core 7 is not a helical spiral created by a fixed point lathe, or they had such advanced technology and material science that they were able to do far greater than better than space age technology, leaps ahead of space age technology. We're essentially going into magic. Now, Christopher Dahn, Uncharted X, they love to reference this paper. I'll put links to earlier videos. I go through what this paper actually says, the way that things were done, and so they're comparing apples and oranges, but they love to bring this one up and just, look, there was a paper, something. All right. Now, in this paper, it highlights the argument between Lucas and Petrie. The debate between Lucas and Petrie is, irrelevant at this point because experiments have been done. What does the data say? Well, anyway, let's, again, you can replicate it in a short time. The challenge is open to any of these lost ancient high technology channels. Come on, you can talk and tell us all about how engineers have proven this is impossible. And I'll just be silent in the background, drilling in real time and showing this. And you can ask for different, you can point me to a core, look at, and then I can replicate them. I have done this, I'm willing to do it in real time. But of course they won't do that. But well, maybe they will. Maybe they will. Maybe they're silly enough to try and think they're going to bluff someone. Right, Petrie. It seemed physically impossible that any particle of a loose powder could become so embedded in a soft metal by the mere accidents of rubbing it, that it could bear the immense strain needed to plough out a groove of any considerable depth in such a hard material as quartz. The diamond drill cores are clumsy and smudged when compared to Egyptian cores. Well, what does Alfred Lucas say about this? He's the man. All right. As neither copper nor bronze is sufficiently hard enough to cut stones such as basalt, diorite, granite, quartzite, schist, a harder material than the metal is required to do the work, which must be used either in the form of a fixed cutting point, teeth, or a loose abrasive powder. In my opinion, it was a loose abrasive powder of finely ground quartz sand used wet, loose quartz sand which occurs great abundance. But even I'd point out there that you get a masonry drill or a cutting disc, it doesn't have fixed points. It's embedded with diamond as well. So it's not the fixed points of the sharp little bits of the steel. It's still the diamond and the abrasive value of it. Steel is not sufficient enough to cut hard stones in the manner that they're talking about either. So don't get too caught up like soft copper or bronze. Steel is softer than the same material as well. So if you want to argue it can't be done copper or bronze, you're really arguing it can't be done with steel either. But now at the time that these guys were talking, the diamond technology or the tool technology has also improved significantly. But that's irrelevant to a point. It's going back to loose abrasive powders. Okay, so continuing with Lucas. In my opinion, to suppose a knowledge of cutting these gemstones to form teeth and setting them in a metal such in a manner that would bear the strain of hard use and do this early period assigned would present greater difficulty than those explained by the assumption of their employment. It is highly probable that pieces of abrasive would have been forced into the metal. They might have remained for some time and produced the same in effect as intentional or permanent ones. Well, we can deal with that, but it's loose powder of finely ground quartz sand used wet. It doesn't even have to be quartz, but what makes the Mohs scale of granite and basalt, what gives them the high, and sands, even again, I've said this before, if you haven't heard, the most crumbly sandstone, or even just beach sand, because the stone doesn't have a hardness, it's the minerals that make it up. Beach sand has a hardness equivalent to granite. Crushed sandstone has a hardness higher than granite, even the most crumbly sandstone in there. Don't get fooled by this Mohs hardness stuff. Like cuts like. Granite gets its hardness, Mohs hardness, from the quartz it contains. Sandstone, which has more quartz as a percentage, therefore is higher. All right, here's just a couple pics of my experiments. I've done them before, links in the description. This was created by loose sand. I used quartz, I used crushed sandstone, I used crushed granite, I also used corundum. These grooves can absolutely be repeated. Ben from Uncharted X and his minions are still insisting that they're not, and they're going to probably, no, this is different. No, well, what are the metrics of there anyway? All right, Petrie was wrong about this. Yeah? He just, he wasn't, because the experiments have been done and they can be replicated. And for those who say, you faked them, you hoaxed them, let's do it in real time on one of you only post it on your channel. You get all the clicks, you get all the income, but let's see if one single one of you has the balls to stand up for what you're arguing and complaining about the cover-up. Okay, let's go a little bit further because this is an important point. Or also, fluvial abrasion is one of the ways that this is the essence of what's happening. And as Petrie says, it seems physically impossible that any particle of loose powder could become so embedded in a soft metal by the mere accidents of rubbing it. Well, no. Here's the tip of one of my experiments in the drill tube. I have the same thing happen with my saws. The grit gets embedded in the soft metal. So it's not physically impossible. It's or unlikely. It's actually it's a soft metal that gets embedded in there, yeah. Iron is a soft metal. So when they talk about it has to be a fixed point. So when they do the Vickers hardness test, what they do is they get, I think it's a 50 kilo weight. They embed a diamond in the end, get it to a certain height, and then drop it, and then see what the damage is to the other side. Diamond has a cleavage plane, so you can try and smash diamond from one way, it won't crack as well, not as easily. But if you get it from the side, just this is how diamond cutters have been doing it. They can use copper tools. Bang, they know where the cleavage plane is, and they can shear off and create all those facets on the diamond. So it's what is hardness, what is toughness, elasticity and tensile strength. These are all it gets a bit technical. But when they say, if you hear Mohs hardness, that it's not hard enough to cut it, either they're using it wrong. They don't understand what Mohs hardness is about. What can scratch something else. It's got nothing to do about what chisel can pound against something else. This will be more closely looking at Vickers hardness, which is about toughness essentially. All right, but no. So Petrie was just wrong. He didn't. He's not God, and he was a gentleman scholar, not someone who was familiar with the tools. Lucas was correct, and in this particular argument, he was also much more qualified to have the argument. Uncharted X, all these other, Petrie. Let's not talk about Lucas. And that's an argument from authority. It doesn't matter because the experiments have been done. They can be repeated in a short time, and they can be repeated in such a short time that we can do it on a live stream and just end this once and for all. But this, again, I don't think it's going to happen because, well, all right. So Petrie was wrong. Now we have the last part of it. Uncharted X in that recent podcast, Christopher Dunn, and again, not something going back in time and bringing this up and trying to hammer them on what they're still saying now. They argue that there is a cover-up, that photos are being manipulated to hide the truth of the spiral. It's the evil agents of the archaeological CIA going around in there. They're after us. Oh, we're truth seekers. All right. So again, this is the text. These are the images that Christopher links to his page. All right, so John Bodsworth of the UK has also taken a photograph of granite core 7 and is frequently displayed on the internet, tilted on a similar angle as the photograph in Gaze of the Truth and used to deny Petrie's spiral thread observation. So, he's got, he's tilted a thread here and said, if it's the true arrangement, it should be like this, and that, the high point on one side should roughly match the low point on the other, but if you tilt it, it makes it look like it runs parallel with the axis. And John Bodsworth, his naming, well, I found John Bodsworth's photo, and there it is there. Okay, so let's compare them. So why is he trimmed off the bottoms and the tops here? Oh, that's interesting. Well, let's go back to the, he should have shown Bodsworth photo, but let's look at the core 7 because, especially at the broken off, the bottom of the core, because here we see the core upside down. That is the top, and that's the bottom where it was broken off. Yeah. But even the flat end, the top of the core, it's a little bit wobbly. So even if you were to lay this as they are laying it on the table there, that's not the true axis necessarily. It could be, but it's not necessarily the true one. And so, that photo, but then we have this as the evidence of this cover-up and this they tilted, again, this is what Ben from Uncharted X says, this is what Christopher Dunn says, that there has been active manipulation of data to conceal the truth. Yes, okay, now we're open, all right? Well, you've got to flip this photo around because now, the bottom, and the bottom is there. The top of it is all crooked and broken. So when this is on the shelf, unless they've got they've gone to some effort to get it perfectly aligned, and this is in the shelf, it's not going to stand up straight. It's not that the photo was tilted and manipulated to cover it up. It's that it's an uneven bottom, and it just hasn't been placed, or it's been moved or banged over. But where's this manipulation? The only manipulation is in Christopher Dunn's photo. He's taken his photo, he's tilted it, and said, "Look what they've done to this is what they've done." Of course, it's with an uneven, broken end. It's not going to sit perfectly vertical, or at least it's not going to sit perfectly vertical as Christopher Dunn believes it should be, because even then, the top of the core is not necessarily perfectly flat and broken. He's manipulated his own image and then said, well, this is what they've done this to their images to conspire and cover up the mystery. No, they didn't. They just took a photo of the core in the shelf because it has an uneven bottom. But you know who does fake data? You know who does commit fraud? Is Christopher Dunn. Link in the description. One of the features of Core 7 is the tapering, and this was described as proof and evidence of it. Christopher Dunn faked an experiment with apparently using this top-heavy, hand-powered tool, and got a lack of taper and said, see, it must be advanced tech. Links in the every experiment gets a tapered core except for Christopher Dunn's one, and if he did it as he claims to have done it, as he describes it, and as he shows his photos, no, he faked it. He's a fraud. He lied. So back to this recent podcast. I also put it, so again, this symmetry of statues, this is another one of their things. Absolute nonsense. Ridiculous to even suggest it, because you just examine their evidence. This is the actual evidence they present. I go through there. It is completely bunk. They know it is completely bunk. Yeah, they know. All right, so it's a profitable error becomes a calculated lie when you refuse to correct it and when you cover up and censor it. When it comes to Core 7, the lies and the cover-up are from the very people who are complaining about it. It is not a spiral. Scientists Against Myths went to the effort of getting the data from and presenting the data from Petrie's museum. And what we have is, going back to Christopher Dunn, these sort of grainy, dodgy photos of him wrapping a thread around it, and those threads... yeah, this is... They know this, they cover it up, and they still to present it because they're con men. They've built up a business, and they must protect the business. They're not interested in truth. They're not interested in reality. They say, "I want you must do the experiment," and then you do it, and then they don't even have the principles to show it. They will just offhandedly, but those experiments didn't do it. They won't link. They won't name them. They won't show them. They won't repeat them. Because they are con men. If it was just delusional, at some point, like they would, present the evidence and say, "Oh, look at, it doesn't match." But at least their audience would be able to see it and compare it for themselves. But they don't do this. This is calculated. This whole thing is a dud. And at this point, now. This is a review of what went back a couple of years, and they're still repeating it. Deliberate, calculated lies with big audiences, and they're spreading this around, and because it's so profitable, and it's basically an incestuous little community where they all back up each other. No one ever criticises the other. It's all about it's kumbaya. We're all And then apparently they're truth seekers. No, this is a lie. The only, in the case of Christopher Dunn, I mean, this is legally actionable, if he wants to put it that way. He's a fraudster, because it'd be. I'll repeat my experiments in real time. You repeat your experiments in real time, and anyone. It's just obvious that the taper is happening and that Christopher Dunn faked his experiment. And even by the description he gives, it was like just the worst experiment ever done in history. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If they want to, their accusations of cover-up and fraud and manipulation and well, that's it there. So do your best, fellas. They're scammers. It's a scam, it's a lie, it's a fraud, it's a con. If it was an error before, well, you correct it. You say, okay, fair enough, and then move on. Well, okay, maybe this point. But they're still selling it. They're still going to keep selling it because they're immoral, without decency, without character, without any cowards, because they make the challenge and they won't respond. And when someone responds, they won't go there. Pathetic, weak little men. So firstly, their evidence is terrible and wrong, incorrect, but also it's their actions. So yes, firstly, attack the argument. There is no argument to be attacked because it's rubbish, but it's also the behaviour and the pattern of these things, of these people, these individuals. They are con men and frauds, liars, and and they're going to keep lying, and they're going to keep selling, and they're going to keep lying, and this is what they are. So, if you want what is Core 7 a spiral? Absolutely not. Maybe that was just bad interpretation, analysis on their point. Fair enough, but it's the cover up and the censorship and the denial and the refusal to engage in the argument that you set up. I don't want to argue on the internet. No, but you argued on the internet and said you must demonstrate this. Well, yeah, okay. And now that the demonstration has been done, it's no, I'm not going to argue on the internet. They're frauds and lies. It's or such incredible delusion that you have to pity them for their mental state. With that, SGD, cheers, have a good one. Core 7 is not a spiral, never was, never shall be.